Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. And joining me tonight or today on this 4th of July special, our Native Lives Matter episode, we welcome back Chris Miller, aka Silverspook, who is a gaming content creator, indie sci-fi writer, and outspoken Indigenous Hawaiian Leftist activist. And yes, so yeah, Chris, welcome back. It's a real honor to it's a real honor to speak to you, especially on Indigenous topics.
Yeah, thanks a lot, mahalo for having me back on, Youri. Always good to speak on your podcast.
Likewise, it's a real honor to have you on. And since we're recording this for the 4th of July, I wanted to ask you why, why do you think Indigenous people, but also Black and Latinx people and those in U.S. colonies like American Samoa, the Marshall Islands, Puerto Rico, and let's even broaden it, and even queer folk, why they should not be celebrating the 4th of July.
Yeah, so the 4th of July obviously is day of celebration for uh day of celebration for people who identify as United States of America Americans. And we can't stop them from doing that, but as I point out frequently around this time of year, all the time, but I pointed out even more so, is that the United States is not a country ultimately that is a country that leads the world in independence and of freedom and of human rights and democracy and all those things that they purport. Especially for Native people, especially for people of color around the world, and especially for anybody who stands against the capitalist system. Also, it's not a place that is it's not a place that has supported actual independence or actual democracy. It's never been democratic with Native people, as Haunani K. Trask, she is one of our great Native Hawaiian or Kanaka Maoli leaders, pointed out. The United States stole our land, imprisoned our leader at the time, Liliuokalani, forcibly made us a colony of the United States, banned our language, eradicated our history as much as they possibly could. They didn't successfully do that because I'm still around, and others like me. And so it's and so they were the opposite of what brings about independence. They don't bring independence. They bring forced dependence upon the most horrific forces on the earth. I mean, I feel like in 2024 at this moment, I don't think it's becoming more clear, I think, to many people, with the exception of some Western people or people within the Western orbits. And even inside there, I think it's becoming more clear that that's the case. But for those who, if it's not the case yet, for that minority of the world that still believes in the U.S. And the collective West, the colonialist, capitalist,
pan-European imperialists, as I call them.
And the pan-European, the NATO stand, the parent of the United States. Ultimately, the United States is a Euro visitor project. These are people that are temporarily, in many cases, it's United States is a European entity. It's very short. It's only been there for about a little over 200 years. It's already falling apart. So yeah, there's a lot of let's be nice and call it healing that has to also be done within Europe, where these people came from. And also, but it doesn't, for whatever reason. I mean, we can go into each of these topics individually, but it's not a day to celebrate. We don't celebrate. We're gonna have a we are gonna cook some food on that day, but we're not in celebration of July 4th. Actually, I got some extra fireworks, like some extra loud firecrackers and these certain kind of whistling fireworks to try to scare away as many Americans as possible, and Euro settler colonizers from here as possible. Because that's what we in Hawaii. Number one, there's giant flying cockroaches that are like, they call them B-52 cockroaches. They're far more deadly uh than most cockroaches, with the exception of the United States B-52, obviously. But and we also have giant centipedes that can jump off trees. There's fireworks that go off at any time of the day. And there's all kind of things in Hawaii. There's chickens, roosters everywhere. You will never sleep again in Hawaii. And please do not vacation there under the current colonial capitalist occupation, which all the hotels, every single one of them, are owned by non-Hawaiians, and vast disproportionately, it doesn't negatively impact us when you stay here, when you visit here, when you buy land here, when you do anything here. And so we're gonna celebrate deoccupation day on July 4th. And yeah, anyways, I'll stop there because I can go off forever on these.
Fantastic. And actually, I have to ask a quick follow-up question. I'm sure you have indigenous friends across Turtle Island and Alaska, which is also very similar to Hawaii in many ways. How the U.S. colonized and whatnot. But I have to ask this question: how do your other indigenous leftist friends, how do they celebrate this offensive holiday, the Fourth of July? I'm curious if you can give us any insights on that.
Oh, other native people like in Turtle
Like,
Island or U.S.
yeah, like from from California, or from Iowa, or from Idaho, or from Wyoming, or or Oklahoma. I'm curious, how would they celebrate? Well, how would celebrate? Well, not celebrate, but how would they practice? What's their Fourth of July? Ritual.
Um, I haven't been physically at their celebrations very often, but I feel like Native Americans, indigenous people, and what's sometimes called, obviously Turtle Island. There's many names for it, but the Americas. They generally, it's not it's not celebrated. It's a day of mourning. It's a day of it's a hard day. It's a day where you remember that a all of that history exists. The United States is it's a crime on the land across their territories. You remember the Trail of Tears. You remember the genocide. You remember being forced off. You remember what's happening right now, right? In the Middle East. You watch that you can watch it in real time, right? What happened to your people in July 4th. It's probably going to be even more real now because we're watching the United States and its collaborators do again what was done to Native Americans. And so, yeah, I would say that I'm when I said I'm going to celebrate July, I'm going to cook some food outside and have a anti July 4th celebration. I'm still being facetious. I'm not saying that everybody does that. Although we do shoot fireworks. We do shoot fireworks because they sell it at the store around this time. They don't where I am. They don't sell that.
And when you do it, it scares it scares the white people and the fake Hawaiians, and you're hoping that that giant cockroaches or giant centipedes run into them.
I'm not joking about there being giant cockroaches and giant centipedes, but we do there is this element of we don't want as many settler colonial, not to say if your skin color is the wrong color, we want you out of here, but we're being forced out of our own land, like in Palestine at a less severe and deadly rate, but not deadly. 100 of us were killed by the United States last year in Lahaina, And I do mean that. I haven't seen
Yeah.
nobody prove me wrong on that. So we can come to that at some point. The United States is and it statistically is displacing us in prison rates, in the child, the weaponized genocide system of CPS, Child Protective Services, stealing
Mm.
children from parents. So like we're being wiped out, like literally. And a lot of Hawaiians are brainwashed into believing that's not the case. But every Hawaiian that believes that is they're being menticided, which basically means like eradication of the knowledge and your consciousness of your own identity. It goes along with the process of genocide, right? So it's just to the school system. And so so I'm kind of I'm half joking about that, but
Yeah.
kind of not. I want people. I don't want anybody to we want as many people to not be coming here as possible under the current circumstances. Like when we have self-determination, when we have actual independence, when we have democracy, human rights, actual freedom, and a control over our land to use it and operate on it in a way that isn't completely destroying it. Everyone, even non-Hawaiians, are being harmed and kill. I mean, many people that weren't Hawaiian were harmed in Lahaina. Everyone is being harmed by the $2 million, 1.2 to $2 million housing prices here. I mean, the military poisoning every single island, blowing them up. They're going to blow them up some more in August with this giant 26 country international death cult, Death Star war games they're going to have with Israel.
Yeah.
So everyone is harmed by this stuff, and it will any people like my partner Holly is a white Caucasian person from so-called Canada, the Ukrainian and various other Scottish and British descent, but and there's lots of people that are and she's we're married and we have Native Hawaiian children because we don't do blood quantum, but we don't believe in that. That's nonsense. But people that understand that and are capable of like existing in Hawaii and like supporting us in that in this struggle, standing against white supremacy and the colonialist capitalist system, like they don't have a problem with that. They also understand that there are the indigenous fauna here, like what I just said, and
Mhm.
there are there's giant volcanoes that will incinerate you. Also, we live very close to one, and if you come to Hawaii, you could be incinerated. You could be burned to death. So you should think about that as well. And you have to just accept that. And the thing, it's funny because I'm also kind of half joking about that. I mean, we don't have Krakatoa here, but like people, but the way that the West, which is a nonsensical place full of people who are easily tricked into believing nonsense. Every time a volcano erupts, which they do erupt, they will destroy thousands of houses, and they'll destroy your hotel.
Mhm.
But they'll be like, oh my God, why did the Hawaiians? I want my money back. I'm going to sue the Hawaiians for making the volcano erupt. It's just the most ridiculous. Like, oh my God, all of Hawaii is being destroyed. Like, there's number one, there's 8 islands, right? And it's like it's our fault that the volcano is erupting. It's like nobody. Anyway, so it's kind of like it's someone. Well, yeah. If you come to Hawaii, we're gonna eat you just like we ate Johnny Depp in parts of the Caribbean. Yeah, because you're gonna say that anyway. You believe racist nonsense anyway, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I'm joking, maybe I'm not. If you come, maybe Silverspook will freaking cook and eat you like we did Captain Cook. I mean, maybe why don't you find out? You want to find out? Come here. We'll see. Because you're gonna
Well,
believe that anyway. Because of anyway, yeah.
anywho, but yeah, it's interesting what you said. A day of mourning, yes. Yes, that is what it should be. But that being, but that being said, which do like will a lot of like indigenous people across Hawaii, Alaska, what we know as Turtle Island, actually honor those who literally gave their bodies and their lives to resist manifest destiny and the ongoing settler colonial project.
Oh, sorry. Can you ask that one more time?
Yeah, no, I was wondering if a lot of indigenous people across Hawaii and Turtle Island, when it is a day like the 4th of July or Columbus Day or Thanksgiving Day, will a lot of them actually celebrate? Will a lot of them actually celebrate those indigenous warriors who died, resisting manifest destiny and the settler colonial project?
Yeah, yeah. definitely like recently, you know, the celebration of the defeat of the U.S. settler colonial project in a battle with Colonel Custer. I was mixing him up with Colonel Sanders. You know, another horrible entity. You know, starting a giant capitalist corporation. And
Exactly.
but you know, there is celebration of the defeat of the you know military defeat of the you know one serious military defeat among others of the United States military in that project, which was a genocidal project, very much like the axis of resistance in the Middle East, militarily, routinely having defeats, whether that's you know the Yemen or the Lebanon, Palestinian legitimate armed struggle, which it is, and or any others, right? That is a continuation really of the Western settler colonial project in the United States. And it very much echoes like what's happening in Israel, where they actually military haven't, I don't know what people are, where people are on that, what information they have on that. But in case you don't know, the militarily they haven't defeated Hamas. They haven't defeated the armed resistance. They apparently have a plan to try to fight Lebanon, which has already beaten them militarily multiple times, and they gonna even more so do that this time. But it's that and the United States, France, Britain, the entire EU. Some of them are having second thoughts now, but the collective West has supported that this entire time. They've given them weapons, money, arms, as we all know, and they still lost to massively less economically resourced and technologically resourced people. And the Native Americans, right? And we saw in the plains Native people, right, defeated the United States military with Mr. Custer and stuck what was it? I think the women stuck like funnels in his ears to make sure that in the afterlife he got better. He was more able to hear because they thought maybe he was deaf, right? When the Native people said, "Do not come onto our territory and try to steal our land, or we will actually defend ourselves, unlike what Israel does, which is just an offensive, genocidal, apartheid, Holocaust 2.0, literally, with concentration camps." And he said, if you try to do that to us, we will militarily defeat you. So the women, number one, there were women, also women warriors who also fought in those battles, because patriarchy is part of this. And when he was killed, the women stuck these hearing aids in his ear and said, hopefully in the afterlife you will be better at listening. And yeah, so that's a military celebration that Native peoples have for the resistance against these projects. And of course, I mentioned Captain James Cook was a celebrated colonizer who's journeyed all over the world and
As
helped.
my Australian Indigenous friends are unfortunately far too familiar with that white supremacist douchebag Captain Cook. Yeah.
Yeah, so Captain Cook, he came he traveled all around the world, helped the British Empire expand, and steal, do the same thing, right? Which is to steal land, forcibly colonize through a variety of means. For the British Empire, on which the sun didn't set for a while. Now it's definitely setting big time. Along with its sick descendant, the Anglo-United States.
One can only hope.
Yeah, it's definitely definitely in terms of economic and military power, they are closing out this sad chapter of history. But anyways, so Captain Cook came to, he's expanded throughout the Pacific, and he came to Hawaii and overstayed his, I mean, again, he overstayed his welcome. It's a long story, but basically there was a disagreement on one of the islands where Captain Cook's men kidnapped a child of one of the political leaders. It was a hostage taking. That would have started a war anywhere else. If this would be like if the president, this is like somebody, an officer from France kidnapped the scion of the British crown or something, right? I mean, why would you do that, right? but Captain Cook, so he did like something. It was a terrible thing. Why would you even try to do that? But he's like, well, these are just some brown people. These are just some brown or black people. We'll do whatever we want. So and so he, in his hubris, he kidnapped. They kidnapped. There's disagreement. They kidnapped son of a chief, and then when they tried to return the kidnapped child, or the kidnapped I'm not sure if it was a child, but it was a kidnapped descendant of one of the leaders. The men resisted, and then there was a fight, and then somebody was shot, and then there was it increased in intensity, right? This the back and forth, and then Captain Cook, right, himself was eventually in the squabble. He was killed, and so we Hawaiians killed him, and then we turned him into a pickled white pig's feet. That pickled white feet is my favorite. We have Captain Cook's spare ribs. We have like a polenta and garlic and onion. That's the best way to eat colonizer. Captain James Cook, he fed a lot. We had very, very renewable. It was like very, 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 very cruelty free steak. Nobody good was harmed when we ate that guy up. It was amazing.
Let me just say one thing. Hero 1+1. We do not endorse cannibalism, even if we hate white supremacists.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, we're all demons and animals, right? So, is it really cannibalism? I know, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I mean, in all seriousness, no. We did. It's not like, we ate them because we needed some food. But there are rituals in which in Hawaii, in the Pacific, there are rituals in which people's it's actually an honor in certain Austronesian, which is the indigenous peoples of the Pacific collectively. Some of these is Samoa, Fiji, but in multiple cultures, and in Hawaiian culture, the flesh, the bones of the what's called the iwi, right? Iwi is the Hawaiian word that approximately means bones, but it also means like the soul. Like it's like it's where for a native Kanaka people, Kanaka Maoli, it's the most sacred part that remains, the physical remains. The bones, the flesh is not as important, and so there will be sometimes intentional removing of the flesh so that the bones can be preserved. So it was technically obviously Hawaiians were very upset at Captain Cook, right? But yeah, right, for legitimate reasons like we talked about. But it was like, okay, well, he was a great chief. He was a great leader of these British people, so we're going to honor him even though he did this thing. So that's really what it was. But of course they went back, and then then we have all the stories. We have got all the Western stories about and then they ate and they sacrificed all these people, and then they ate. Everyone's cannibals there. I mean, that's not the only time that something like that has happened, but it's basically like there's just like a lot of projection because a great British world history creating sailor, right, got killed, and it's kind of it was the NYT, that was like the BBC copium of the time, right? Oh, well, those Hawaiians are just a bunch of savages anyway. It's not like we ever accidentally killed billions of people around the world, stole everything, and turned the earth into a smoldering torment nexus, right? It's just that those Hawaiians one time, they're just savages down there, they're just eating everyone. So obviously, like everything, I was in case it's not clear, like I'm not saying like everybody's just gonna cook and eat people in Hawaii, but part of the reason why that exists, I mean, you still see that. You see that in, as I said, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Like they're like, whenever there was a movie where white people are going to a Caribbean, Pacific, tropical island, right? It's like people are being white people, right, are being either being worshipped as gods, which is that's a bunch of nonsense, not true. A lot of the time, it was just actually the native people who actually have hygiene practices to like take baths more than once a year. Right? They're like, you smell like a sewer, you smell like dying, you smell like dead rats. Okay, so we're gonna follow you around with this burning, incense or some kind of pleasant smell, not because we're worshiping you as like the second coming of some a deity of ours, but because like can you please like wash once, right? Like Jake Gyllenhaal and is the modern French perfume salesman, right? Which is just like, saying, no, 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 no. White people, bathing is what, not bathing is what makes us great, right? It's like inside of our congealed, a sweat that the 3 inches thick, this armor of grime is what has made us the most powerful. You're not number one, the most powerful. You lost militarily, historically, you haven't won anything.
Yeah.
Whether that's Vietnam, whether that's the Buffalo, whether that's the Plains Indians, or right now against the poorest Arab nation with that's beating your butt in the Red Sea. You never won anything. Number one. Number two, stop making excuses to take a bath. Number three, we're not worshiping you as gods, right? But everything in Western culture, I mean, so much of Western culture, white Euro culture, is just making up nonsense stories about
Yeah.
how awesome you were, when it's actually just like, can you just grow up and clean your room a little bit, right? Stop destroying everything. But it's just like, oh, no, 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 no. Actually, we were doing so great, and then we accidentally destroyed everything. Oops.
Yeah.
No. Anyway. So yeah.
Oh my. This leads to my other. Well, this leads to my question. Now, I'm actually curious. Given that there's going to be, a U.S. That there's going to be another U.S. election, or selection between two warring plutocrats, two warring Southern colonialists. I've always wanted to. I've always been curious about this, which is, out of curiosity, what is the voting trend of the vast indigenous communities in the U.S. or your own distinct community in Hawaii and Alaska? Because the late Glen Ford of Black Agenda Reports, he often bragged and boasted that Black people in the U.S. were the most left-leaning constituents, especially on war and peace. I wanted your response to that, and please feel free to give my peoples a run for their money.
Um. Oh, so that the Black population is the most left leaning.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, I mean, like, there's obviously, like, anti-Blackness is a real problem worldwide historically, and it still is today. And they're one of in Black African peoples. Well, I mean, some people identify as Black or African. So and
Yeah.
I shouldn't speak too much for people that are African, Black, diaspora, Pan-African. But I'm just on one connection in Hawaii, just on, like, where there's some problems there. Is obviously Barack Obama's he's from Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He is of African descent, and but yeah, he has he's not been I don't know. It actually, I used to body surf, which is it's basically surfing without a board, using your body. I used to go to the same beach that his favorite beach is Sandy Beach. It's on the east shore of Oahu, and I went to school across from his school. In fact, it's a very expensive school. Yeah, it's a 30-40. It was $30,000 a year, like several years ago. And so a lot of it, a lot of what his mom's side is like, his grandma is or was a head of a big bank that's connected to big French banks. It's basically a U.S. of French banks is what owns Hawaii. It's the Anglo-Franco, neo-colonialism is alive and well, sadly, here.
Interesting.
And I mean, I'm not saying his mom is like Bill Gates or the head of it's not Macron herself, but like, he is not just from some poor I just came from the ground up. Like, he went to the fanciest school. He was groomed. He wasn't like groomed at the scale of, like, I don't know if anybody knows you probably know who Juan Guaido is. If you're listening to this, I would guess. But it's somebody who was like, he was somebody who went to Harvard. He wasn't just like he got into Harvard because he came out from the streets of Chicago. He just had, like, not to say that if just because you come out from the streets of Chicago with all your parents and your family being poor, that's going to automatically make you, great. But I mean, he or make you a very truly leftist person. But he was, he had a lot of, like, growing up in Hawaii is a weird thing. I mean, it's a very unique experience, filled with a lot of contradictions, obviously. But he was to my mind, he was the worst of the Star-Spangled Roman emperors. By that I mean, obviously, the United States presidents. in the sense that like he um when the United States was, and by extension the collective West, the colonialist capitalist order, was like on its, it was very much like teetering over the abyss in the 0809 global financial crisis, where there's a possible alternate present that branches off from that timeline, where the United States ceased to exist a lot earlier, as a planetary, economic and military hegemonic force, because its entire kind of financial system just completely just is eradicated, right? And Obama was brought in to basically salvage that by going by convincing people Occupy Wall Street, which I was at. I was in Hawaii. In Hawaii, it was called De-Occupy Wall Street. We actually went there with our fire gold. Yeah, because obviously Hawaii is illegally occupied by the United States, genocidal. Under the United Nations, Hawaii is a illegal occupation, of fraudulent annexation, and the U.S. government actually has no jurisdiction in the country of Hawaii, and it's been ordered by the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights to withdraw all its military. Right? Nobody wants to talk about that, but that's actually the actual international law standing in the UN. That's from the UN, which is a corrupt organization in favor of the United States and the West. Right? And so back to Obama. So Obama's what he's done is to perpetuate the U.S. beyond what might have been its end, and that's like one of the worst things I could possibly imagine, especially when in a time when you have it's been a planetary superpower potentially for an additional 15 years, causing billions of people destruction. Like imagine if like the world was on a belt. Imagine if there's like a Silk Road, imagine if there were electric cars, electric vehicles, a rearranging of the world order into multipolarity in 2009, or like rapidly moving in that direction. Now there's a lot of possibilities of what might have and what might not have happened, but it's definitely the case that the United States, China had to buy up billions upon billions upon billions of United States treasuries and debt just to float the United States. It's giant, the collective Western banking system, which is of course the U.S. Central Bank, the JCB, Japanese Central Bank, and the ECB, which all of them were basically broke. And the last 15 years has basically just been them printing and printing and printing trillions upon trillions of dollars to float the system. But anyway, so they needed somebody that would give hope and change, right? The first Black president, right, that would tell people this narrative that the United States has some flaws, but you have to believe in us. You have to sign up for the U.S. military. If the United States military is one of the most, it's the largest carbon emitter as a single organization on this entire planet from a climate change perspective, U.S. military. Now, of course, in terms of actual death and destruction, it's one of the most, the most destructive force in terms of ending people's lives, enforcing global capitalism and colonialism, which itself crushes and has destroyed so many billions of people over the centuries, or over the time it has existed. And so Obama got so many, and especially a lot of young Black and brown people, to sign up for the U.S. military. Right, which is the good thing is now. Oh God, yeah.
How can I say he definitely helped pivot many people to the right on some issues, but yeah, he did largely pivot a lot of people to the right. So a lot of Black and brown folks of a Latino background who later turned on him when he became the supporter in chief. He got many of them to be supportive of imperial wars, and got many white leftists or supposedly white leftists to be in favor of the hunts of Julian Assange. Thank God Julian Assange is free and whatnot. And then sold people a fraudulent healthcare, which isn't single payer healthcare or even a public option system. It was something that the Heritage Foundation cooked up, and more and more and more. But yeah, but that being said, when it comes to how indigenous people vote, do a lot of indigenous people, are a lot of them very socially liberal, very much, very much in favor of single payer healthcare and stuff like that, and for free education for all, for universal childcare and so forth. Again, the late Glen Ford, he claims that black people were oft were the most left leaning constituents, especially on War and Peace. Yeah, I'm curious your response to that, because I'm pretty sure indigenous people, especially the unique indigenous communities of Hawaii and Alaska, would give black people and Latinx people a run for their money, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. So, I think I slightly confused the question you're asking initially. So let me try to get. I'll answer that question, and I'll try to answer that question you just asked as well about how indigenous people where their politics lies. Yeah. So I mean, long story short about that, it's true. I mean, Glen Ford is absolutely correct. In one sense, African people, black people, like, are indigenous people. They're indigenous to Africa. They are not, obviously, unless you become a comprador and you support the white supremacist imperialist, system, then, like Kamala Harris or Obama. I mean, those are kind of like the outliers. I mean, that kind of like show like what, that's a
Black
minority
restoration of
of,
class, yeah.
yeah, they're minority of the traders, you know, but they are the black population is like, yeah, it's they have historically real, I mean, it's like, we don't have to, it's hard to even describe it, but I mean, like, they're stolen and enslaved on the land, right?
Yeah,
Some people will argue, oh, well, they're also settlers, and it's like, if you are stolen from your land and enslaved, um that is not the same as moving from one place from Europe, right, in order and exploiting the white supremacy, the systemic white supremacy, with the full encouragement and the full, the full backing of the colonial powers, right? That were like,
exactly.
yes, yes, please, just like they want you to come to Israel. That's like, and then they want you to go to Germany. Why is the healthcare in Germany? So that they can have a bulwark against Russia or anyone that they deem somebody might be an enemy of the United States or the West or the Europeans or whatever they think is their enemy. Whether the Russians want to be an enemy or not. Sweden, why is there healthcare there? Not because they care about healthcare. No, healthcare is a bribe. Universal healthcare housing is a bribe. It is a stormtrooper cut of the blood. That's what that's for, right? So if you're a black person in the United States, if you're an indigenous person in the United States, and you are like, just as a black person, you're going to be under constant increased threat of poverty, of police murder, of all the things that we can statistically lay out, the millions of people in prison that are disproportionately 2.5 times more likely per capita to be African Americans. Fun fact: the one thing where we Hawaiians and African Americans, we overlap. Hawaiians are actually 4 times more likely to be in prison than the white population. So actually, it's even worse for Native Hawaiians than the black population. But
Yeah,
that has a lot to do with, because we're a colony. We're not even a state. Like, Hawaii is not even a real state. Like I said, that's a big factor there. They're trying to eradicate. It's kind of like if you're a Palestinian, your life expectancy is lower than a black American, because there's a serious, intense, and it's lower than a Hawaiian as well, inside of Gaza, right? Because there's like a very immediate, intense attempt to eradicate that particular people right now, specifically. And Hawaii is an unsinkable aircraft carrier. It's literally the head of the Indo-Pacific Command, the world's largest and most important for the colonialist capitalist order. It is literally the Death Star. It is the location of the command center and nexus of planet-wide empire to wage what it thinks is going to be its war against its greatest enemy. It's a continuous hybrid war against China, obviously,
yeah,
and any forces that will stand against the United States. I mean, and of course they obviously are making it very clear that's the number one enemy. That is the future. They've already surpassed the United States in purchasing power parity, et cetera, et cetera. So Hawaii is there, and obviously Israel is there to maintain control of the the resources and the choke point between Eurasia and Africa, etc. And so these places, so the more intense, so to answer your question, like where is indigenous people's politics and African people's, just to kind of make sure I come back to that one before I spiral too far off. But it's so like the intensity of the Palestinians being like their children being incinerated alive on live TV with white phosphorus, right? Cluster bombed into, starved to death, like by the tens of thousands, hundred, we don't even know how many, right? Is because of the level of strategic importance to the white supremacist colonialist capitalist system that the land that is Palestine is how vital that is, and how powerful a particular lobby, AIPAC obviously, and the Zionist lobby is in the United States, and also a factor of the level of violence that they have been able to, and that the collective West has allowed them to continue to get away with there. In Hawaii, it's not that level of intensity, but as I said, like we have a higher per capita. We're actually shot more, like we're shot more per capita than African Americans in Hawaii, 6 times more. And if you're a Native Hawaiian, you're going to take your child, the rate of child theft is like multiple times more. The rate of incarceration is higher.
And I believe that's the same for all indigenous people across the U.S. part of Turtle Islands.
Yeah, and and so but it's like in Hawaii, it's well, I mean, not, I don't want to say like that which one is suffering more, but my point is that like in Hawaii, you have just another point. There was a study done by, I think it was a Missouri university, but basically where is the most economically unequal place in the United States? There was like and it was 100 is average, and like 100 is average, 50 would be below average, 150 would be extremely bad economic inequality, I mean, within the United States. So like the city of Washington, like DC, got like a 150, 152 or something like that. And then like Manhattan and San Francisco, they score like 140, right? So DC is actually inside of what's called itself the continental United States. DC is literally the worst, most economically unequal. So if you're making if you work as a chef or as a waiter, the ability for you to survive, right, just of any ethnicity, of any race, is the worst there. Hawaii scored a 192. It's literally magnitudes off of the charts, right? It's like the worst place in the United States, right? And so in order, in the sense of actually surviving. So and now it's going to be worse in other places. Like if you're in Congo, right? If you're in
but that being said, when it comes to when it comes to like voting and stuff like that, are indigenous people, are they more supportive? Are they more supportive of Democrats as opposed to Republicans? Are they quite left-wing in their environmental politics, in socio-economics, when it comes to the justice system and taking care of the poor and stuff like that? Are indigenous, do indigenous people tend to be very much a radical left base, but in this two-party duopoly, will often vote for the Democrats in the hopes that they can advance racial justice, social justice, and whatnot?
Well, I guess, to get specific to that question, like I can't really speak. I can't speak for all indigenous people because indigenous people is there's Lakota people, there's Anishinaabe people, and obviously these are all people that are native to America, native to the land that is called itself America. But and I can't say what exactly each of those people do. In Native Hawaiians, like we're not a monolith either, right? So the way that where our politics is, I would say, but the majority of Hawaiians who are not as I brought up the concept of menticide, brainwashing, propagandized, diseducated, which that becomes very difficult because of the like epistemological problems with like how do you know what you even know, and right. But a lot of that the propaganda and the lies, right? That is one thing that the West has excelled at, right? Leads many Hawaiians and many indigenous people in various places, right? To have politics that are that are not what they would have, right? It might be more what would be called right wing politics. For example, Hawaiians to join the military, in a like because I want to, not like economically I need to right now. Not to give those people an out. Nobody should be in the U.S. military ever. No Western military. Nobody should be in any NATO military or any European military. Should all quit. That'll be a great victory. So, but some people, will move in that direction, but mostly that's because that's a part of the colonization process, right? Which is it is a destruction of your culture, right? I said the Hawaiian language was banned, but it's just Hawaiian language was banned, Hawaiian culture was banned, understanding the Hawaiian history was effectively banned. I mean, it didn't make it illegal to learn Hawaiian history, but by stopping people from teaching in Hawaiian language, by taking complete control of all the schools in Hawaii, which everyone was forced into after the U.S. overthrow of Hawaii in 1890s, backed by the United States military, right? The USS Boston, not unlike the United States backing overthrows all around the world. That resulted in many Hawaiians. I mean, if you spoke Hawaiian in school, just as one example, my mom went to school, right, in the 1960s and 70s. When she was 5 or 6, like she said Hawaiian words in class. Like she's not alone. This is historically documented. She said Hawaiian words in class, not like rudely, just like said a Hawaiian word. And her hand they took a hose with a steel end, right? They put her hand on the desk like this, a 5-year-old, and they broke all the bones in her hand. And they said, if you ever speak Hawaiian words again, we will break the bones in your other hand. And her knuckles are all screwed. Her knuckles are all gnarled. They look like tree roots, right? If I bring up, we really talk about Hawaiian history and Hawaiian. My mom goes into like PTSD. She just shuts down. She goes into like in a completely irrational state. She can't even think and talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. They have terrorized the Hawaiian out of my parents. My dad as well. My dad is differently. He had different experiences, but they were both. They don't even like. It's so deep. They don't even know how to begin to really talk about what happened to them. And that was in the 60s. It was worse before that. In the 1980s, when I was born, it was illegal to speak Hawaiian, right? So anyway, so what the point of that is that, what the politics of the Hawaiians are. My parents are like really liberal, which would be right wing in a global, in a sense of, are they left? No, they believe that, Joe Biden did an okay job. They voted for Obama and they thought that was fine. And they liked Bill Clinton, and, they think that, capitalism's not the best, but, it's okay, and they're kind of homophobic. There's more homophobic relatives, right? That, we'll come to the gender if you want at some point, but, Native Hawaiians who had a complete acceptance of LGBTQ plus, what's called LGBTQ plus in the West, and gender fluidity. We had third genders, like 450 million different, 450 million people in the Pacific, by the way, Indonesia, Samoa, Tahiti, Fiji. We all had a third gender, right? It was mahu. There were no, people talk about what's your pronouns. There were no gender pronouns at all in the Pacific language. It's o ya or to ya. It's everything. There's no word that means mother or father. There's only makua, right, which means parent. Anyway, yeah.
So I would have thought that indigenous people would be certainly left certainly left leaning, but due to the two-party system, they probably like Black people, they feel they have to self-censor their politics and just vote for the Democrats because that's the party that's going to be more kinder to us, advance some kind of racial justice or social justice. But it sounds to me as if the example of your family is that, like, no, I mean, like, despite being brutalized and marginalized in this settler colonial system, they've they more or less um I guess they more or less tolerate the fact that the Democrats is they tolerate right wing Democrats and stuff like that. Am I correct in that or?
Well, I mean, like, as I said, it's well, I mean, the point I was trying to get at, I'm explaining a lot of this, and I'm going into a lot of extra details to kind of hammer home the point. But like, it's not that my parents tolerate Democrats. Number one, there is only one party in the West, and Western elections, United States, every European election is a joke. Actually, I think that wasting time talking about Western elections like they matter at all is a disservice to humanity, because you're legitimizing totalitarian, authoritarian regimes when you pretend like voting Republican or Democrat is going to significantly alter any policy, even when the Ash Institute of Ivy League institutions showed 99.5% to 99.9% of all policy is determined by money, and it's determined by a handful of very wealthy people in DC and New York. So talking about elections at all without it's like talking about Israel. Like, well, how much land should they have? Right? You're legitimizing it by talking about it like that. So I don't. That's why I've been kind of dancing around that point. But I don't. I don't. Hawaii. Just as one example, there has been zero Republicans in the Senate, in the governor's seat, in the mayor's seat, and in any seat in Hawaii, like wall to wall. Okay, Democrats for the last 12 years. Okay, and it's 99% Democrats before that. Just like, there isn't a party to vote for. I mean, literally, it's a literal joke. There's no such thing as Western democracy. It's an absolute joke. When I went to vote the last time, I looked at the ballot just so I could laugh at it. There was one option for the senator. It was Mazie Hirono. It was like, there wasn't even an option to vote for somebody else. They're not even pretending like there's a democracy there. So anyway, long story short, I mean, I know this is going to sound, I mean, maybe this might be, I don't know where people's politics are on that, but so like the legitimacy of Western representative democracies is a whole topic. I will talk about that. It's not, no change is ever going to happen through any election in the West ever. Let me say that again. No change will ever happen in the United States, in Britain, in Sweden, in France, in Greece, in Canada, in New Zealand or Australia ever. The belief that will ever change anything is part of why nothing will ever change, and the decay and collapse of the people and the move towards an increasing police state to worse and worse conditions will continue for the foreseeable future, as long as people believe in that legitimacy.
That said, because the lives of Indigenous people have not really improved that much, some probably would argue with me on that. But because because of that, are a lot of Indigenous people do they just like don't engage actually really all that much in electoral politics, unless it's more local stuff like they're like who's going to be their chiefs and stuff like that, or
so to get back to that, so one thing is that most Hawaiians don't view the United States or any of the West as legitimate in any way.
Many Hawaiians we're talking about.
Indigenous Hawaiians, Indigenous Hawaiians, people who are like members of the, view themselves as members of the nation of Hawaii, the country of Hawaii, as I was talking about, which under Western international, this is part of why it's a joke, because under international law, the United States has even admitted, UN that it controls, it says that it doesn't even, the United States state of Hawaii doesn't even exist. So what are you voting in the state that doesn't exist under your own international rules-based order? Anyway, so Hawaii is actually, Hawaiians, a lot of them just choose not to participate in any of the electoral politics because of everything that I've said, right? Like,
Okay.
I mean,
And that being said, with a lot of the indigenous people are a lot of them very much, but a lot of them are very much which you would call very left wing in terms of their views on socioeconomic affairs, how to deal with climate change, queer liberation, anti patriarchy, and so forth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me see if I can try to answer that in a way that directly addresses that. Like the short answer is yes. Like Hawaiians are
Okay.
very left in the same way that Black people are very left, Indigenous Native people are very left anywhere, because they have historical and continued real reasons to stand against all of those systems, right? For reasons that I'm sure like many other guests, many people could speak to. Just as a whole, like now when I was bringing to my parents the history of my parents and their story and like why they are where they are, right? Why they vote, right? And they think that's going to make changes, right? The reason why my parents vote, and I'm not saying that voting is bad, no, just across the board, but I'm just saying like the reason why they have faith, they have more faith in the United States, right, is because they have been forcefully Americanized by the occupation, right? So this is where it becomes complicated, right? Because right, if you get occupied and then you have people that are raised to basically be white, Democrat, or conservative or liberal, right? Because there are some Hawaiians that are more conservative. They vote for Trump, right? They're like they they go to a lot more churches, right? As long as they go to church, they look up to the Republican Party. A lot of Dwayne Johnson, he's a Samoan, right? He's of Samoan background on one side, and he's like the #1 recruiter for a lot of Pacific and people of color for the U.S. military, and he's a Republican Pacific Islander person, right? Many in Samoa, they were because of colonization, they look up to the military and the police, and the U.S. loves that because they
That's a
can be
pity.
good cannon fodder.
That kind of breaks my heart about The Rock.
I mean, I'm sorry, but that's who that's Hollywood is
Yeah.
is the entertainment arm of the empire. So it's a cinema empire. So anyway,
He's also
I know
a
this is
Zionist, so boo.
yeah, anyway, so yeah, my point is that it's difficult in Hawaii. It's not a monolith. Number one, that's right. So there are not all Hawaiians are like my parents. Like there are many other Hawaiians
Okay.
that have there are many other Hawaiians, right, that are less brainwashed or successfully conditioned by the Western diseducation system that is all their schools and all their colleges. That's what makes you believe that there can never be democracy in the West, right, under its capitalist system, which is by Harvard studies proves that there is only plutocracy, if anything, right? And it's a racist plutocracy, obviously, right? So so Western the reason why people believe those things is because they went to schools that were established by the colonial capitalist white supremacist occupiers, right? And so from 1890s, that's a whole generation. So just as one example, right? In 1890, the late 1880s, there was a Ku'e petitions, right? That were a series of letters. That was a series of papers that were sent out to all the Hawaiians in Hawaii and everyone who opposed the United States forcibly colonizing with military force. Like sometimes they generously call it annexation. It just basically means stealing a country. It's considered illegitimate, even under United Nations international law, right? Forcible annexation. And so these Ku'e petitions were sent out, right? In the late 1800s, when the United States was talking about possibly taking Hawaii, and the Ku'e petitions, 95% of Hawaiians at that time in the 1890s, and they were very, very much against. They said no, we do not. They said President William McKinley, we, the undersigned Hawaiians, members of the sovereign country of Hawaii, we do not wish, right? It's kind of like when people get mad at Russia, right? Because Russia stole the Donbass region because they didn't have they had actually they asked the population. Now you could argue that it was illegitimate or not, right? But 95 to 98% of the Donbass region cities, they said we would like to become part of of Russia. We would like to join. We would like to join the Russian entity for reasons that I won't go into right now. But Hawaii, right? Number one, this is why the United States is not democratic, right? The United States didn't even bother to ask Hawaiians what we felt about the United States, right? We had to create, because Russia actually put out these they had this voting process. Would you like to become part of Russia? The United States didn't give us an option. We had to create our own Kuwait petitions, or create our own voting process to see what the popular sentiment, right? What the self-determined stance of the Hawaiians were, right? And obviously, overwhelming was 95% Hawaiians. And as I said the last time I was on your show, why did we say that? Because in Hawaii, we had the world's first universal healthcare system, right? So we have what Americans, Canadians, and the NHS, which is all being severed and destroyed, wish they had. We had in 1959 established Queen's Medical System under Emma Kaleleo Nalani Naearuk, who was she was the partner of one of then leaders who went on foot to raise money for the universal healthcare system. So we had free healthcare, actually free healthcare. There's only free healthcare if you're, as I said, if you're a mercenary for empire in the bulwark states of Scandinavia, the Scandinavian countries, Germany, Israel, and South Korea. That's a bribe. That's not universal health care. If you're a Black or brown, indigenous, Asian person, it's hell for you. And also all of your universal health care is on the stolen blood and treasure and dead bodies of Asia, African, and Latin Americans. So that's not universal health care. Hawaii had actual universal health care paid for by the cooperative and socialist Hawaiian government. And I know they don't necessarily say that, but I'm here to tell you that that's actually what it was, because we also had socialized, renewable powered, waterfall spun cities, including Honolulu. 800 lights were lit by the Hawaiian government owned and nationalized electrical grid. Americans all wish they had this now. I'm sure Europeans, maybe they wish they had a country that was sovereign, right, and not run by DC, right, so that they could have a renewable grid and not be, freezing. I hear they're freezing in the dark in a lot of places, right? If you had renewable power controlled by a sovereign, which is to say not a Western representative democracy like Hawaii, we actually had a sovereign government at the time, right? Before the overthrow. So we had renewable powered cities that had socialized electricity, and there were private white capitalists like William Hall, who was one of the founders of the Hawaiian Electric Company, a private white oligarch capitalist company that took down all the renewable waterfalls that were powering our city. Hawaii was already like Star Trek Future for that time. And said we're going to do is we're going to place that all with fossil fuel, and we're going to charge as much money as we possibly can. Hawaii has the highest electricity prices in the so-called United States now. So that's number two. Number three, we had
but that mindset that did exist in Hawaii back there still exists amongst the indigenous population.
Yeah. So to come back to that. So let me just finish that point. So in that time, right, the Hawaiians, we also had an anti-racist system. We had famous black figures like Alan Moore, who founded the first bowling alley. He was a slave in the United States in the 1700s, and he was a free citizen who was able to help build bowling alleys. He helped build highways. Lahaina Luna, the school, it was started by Betsy Stockton, who was a slave of the white president of Princeton. And she came to Hawaii, was free, and helped build one of the first schools in Maui, Lahaina School. The United States burned that down last year. Okay, so there's another Black and Hawaiian history and white supremacist history. So anyway, so Africans, and not just Hawaiian. The thing, this is another important point. It's not indigenous Hawaiians. It wasn't just indigenous Hawaiians who succeeded prior to the United States' illegitimate, non-democratic, Western representative capitalist democracy occupation of Hawaii. It was African people. There were Asians like Sun Yat-sen, who led the revolution, by the way, the beginning of the forerunner of the revolution in China, who was grew up in Hawaii, and he actually was awarded an award for grammar in the Hawaiian started school by the same mother of universal healthcare, Emma Kaleleo Nalani Naearuk. And he would go on later on. He's still celebrated today because he used the socialist, anti-imperialist system of the Hawaiian kingdom of that time to bring to China. Also, there's another Thomas McGintis, was a lawyer who fought and helped maintain independence in Liberia, and some of the other, and he tried to help people, Black people in the United States. He grew up and was educated in Hawaii and tried to bring the Hawaiian model to Africa, or tried to see what he could do to bring that model out from. So anyway, so long story short, so in that time, we all wanted, as Native Hawaiians, we were obviously left. We were like, it's not even a question. It's like asking like Hawaiians, is your politics left? Is like asking, is water wet? You know, it's like asking Indigenous people, is your politics left? I would argue it's the West is the unhealed. The West is just the unhealed descendants of the Greco-Roman trauma that hasn't recovered from that for centuries. It's not really that Hawaiians are left or that Indigenous people are left. The concept of left and right, you know, it's just, we're just like healed, normal human beings in a non deeply damaged, deeply traumatized, cowardice and selfishness based what a lot of the Arab places will call Great Satan. But basically it's like it's run by the worst kakistocratic people who have perpetuated their own oligarchic wealth indefinitely. And so from my perspective, so I mean, I know this is going to be, might be a bit weird for people that are not Western or are partially Westernized, but it's kind of like, it's not really a question for us, like, what is your politics? Well, historically, if in a historical sense, right? What is your politics? Well, it's not really our politics. It's just like, there is something deeply wrong with you, the people that where you're coming from. I mean, it's not like you are evil, but just like the systems that you're coming from, these are deeply broken, like, and like empirically broken, right? The capitalist system, even environmental scientists, like, this cannot even be sustained much longer, or it's the end of it's the end of all species on Earth, right? So like empirically, right? Western, I mean, really, if that's what the West is, if it's colonialism, capitalism, right? I'm not saying that's everything about, you know, what identifies as the Occident, or, you know, this tail end of Eurasia, but I mean, like, that's historically where a lot of it, certainly the last 500 years, is where it's all coming from. If that's what your culture is, right? It's not really a question of what side of the spectrum are you. Do you want to survive or do you want to not? Like, as a species, do you want to survive or not? It's not like, who do you want to vote for this time? What flavor of ice cream?
Indigenous socialism or Western barbarism. But then I have to ask this question. Now, when it comes to being anti-heteronormative and being very supportive of queer rights, queer liberation, being okay with gender fluidity, non-gender conformity, non-binaryism, and trans liberation, as well as same-sex relations, are Indigenous people and their core values, when it comes to when it comes to Indigenous people and their core values belief, is queer liberation at its core? Because I know much of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island celebrate people who one would describe as who they would describe as two spirits, meaning non-gender conformity, non-binaryism, gender fluids, and and queer. Is this the same in Indigenous Hawaiian culture?
Yeah. So I mean, that's a good question, and we talked about this briefly, like, when we first started, but so there's actually, I mean, this is kind of a slightly, again, a tangential. I know I kind of do these, but this is kind of how Native people talk. We kind of go around in the throughout history, 5,000 years forward and backward at the same time. But there's a movie called Monkey Man. I recommend everybody have a look at it if you haven't yet, because in fact, I was just watching it the other night with Holly, and I was like, Monkey Man is a film.
Wait, is that the movie that's Dev Patel made from Slumdog Millionaire and the British show Kids?
Yeah, Dev Patel is a movie that is written and directed and stars Dev Patel. You know, who is he's Indian. You know, he's of Indian descent, right? Slumdog Millionaire. He was in Sharlto Copley. I'm a fan of the Neil Blomkamp movies, Elysium and such. And Neil Blomkamp also, he's also a science fiction
when it comes
director.
But when it comes to like Indigenous people and queer culture, please talk about.
Okay, yeah. I'll get off of that. I love movies and sci-fi. That's why. But anyway, so back to that. But the reason why I bring up Monkey Man is because there's actually something very, very relevant to the way that again, like, non-white, non-Western people see Indigenous culture that you can see on the screen, right? It's not obviously Indian people of the country of India. I'm not talking about Native Americans, just to make sure nobody's confused. they're not Native Hawaiians, right? But in the film Monkey Man, right, there is the Patel is a he is Indian man. I mean, yeah, I think he identifies, I think, as an Indian guy. But he is resisting against a very unjust system there. But he's joined by, and he is taught by and helped to discover himself. He's kind of lost, kind of like Hawaiian, like in India. It's actually a good example of what I'm talking about, right? There are Indians in India, right, that are participating in their oppression of their own people. They're participating in a capitalist system. They're participating in a system of a kind of certain supremacy, Hindu nationalism. They're participating in
Caste
self,
system, the caste system is still alive and well there. Yep.
yeah, caste system, right? And
Phobia.
they're
Yeah.
yeah, and obviously the British colonial occupation inflamed the negative aspects of that as much as they possibly could and used it to their own advantage, right? And you see that like playing out with the historical caste system, the knock-on effects of the colonial capitalist occupation, and the continued push by the United States and Western entities to kind of keep all those most problematic aspects of that society coming into independence, right? Under wraps. And part of that was eradicating the third gender. Hijra is the actual gender. Let me just make sure I get this correct. I'm not Indian, but myself, obviously. But the Hijra is it kind of is like, it's kind of transgender, intersex. Sometimes eunuch is not necessarily what
Yeah.
the people call it, but it's not but it's a third gender in a way that some Native Americans will have two-spirit people. Indigenous people in America have two-spirit, what's called two-spirit people. Not all of them, and it's different in, again, all the different cultures. In all the different nations that they have. In Hawaii, we have what's called mahu, which is what I am, which is also a third gender. And so it's really great because you get to see on screen so like just to kind of give you an example of this, right? There's an older, it's probably like in the 50s. I think they go by her, but she goes by her in the movie. I think her name is Alpha, and she is a Hijra, third gender Indian person who is like hiding in a temple, right? Because they have been banished by the cis heteronormative, only binary gender, right? British Empire that came and basically wiped them all out and forced them into hiding, right? Like they did in Mahu. Our third gender people in Hawaii. As I brought up earlier, right, as we have LGBTQ plus acceptance, like same gender, being gay or bi or trans, there wasn't really words for these things because you could love who you wanted to love in Hawaiian culture, and there were accepted third genders that were venerated, like the mahu. They had roles in society. They were completely accepted, and it wasn't like making people uncomfortable to have somebody that wasn't a man or a woman, right? Much of the West, right? It basically, the West, one of the unhealed, Greco-Roman, British, French, Spanish, American trauma is the eradication from all of their reality, from their consensus reality of the third gender that the majority of the world's cultures have had, including in Africa, right? Including in Asia, including in Turtle Island, including in the Pacific, right? So, and the third gender, you see them. So part of the movie is about like the kind of the young boy who suffered this fascist colonial traumas, and some of those Indians traumatizing themselves, like finding himself along with these third gender Hijra people, similar to the Native Hawaiian Mahu, who, and they say like there is the Hijra embody Brahma, and they embody the creative forces, and they also embody Shiva, the destructive forces. And without the destruction, and which also means directly fighting and sometimes militarily fighting, and getting rid of the corruption so that new things can grow, right? And so like they were forces for the change in their society historically. They like leaders, and a lot of again, I don't want to equate what the Hijra are in India with what Hawaiian are third gender and what Native Americans they are. It's just all different. But I'm drawing some similarities, right, to explain how queerness, what queerness is in indigenous societies and the connections. Because the way that person is presenting in the way that the Hijra third gender Indian is presenting is the way that many Mahu in Hawaii that I've known have historically presented. We have always been here, and sometimes you have like long hair. Like there's one I used to play in the arcade when I was 12. I used to go to the arcade, and there was a Mahu that they were like 20 something. I remember playing Mortal Kombat with them. And they were like a 6'2" Samoan, like maybe it was unclear if that it was a man or it was a woman. They had long hair, they had like painted nails. The voice was very deep, right? There was not that much facial hair, but it was kind of like, I don't know, is that you wouldn't they spoke differently, right? And I remember like playing like, and they were like shooting, and they used to call Shang Ti Sung. It was like a joke, right? But it was like I remember playing arcade games with this with a Mahu, and I was just like, I'm not sure what gender this person is because nobody's explaining this because Hawaii is forcefully colonized and the United States has eradicated our understanding of our third gender, or they tried to, right? Mahu was a slur. It was an attack term. The United States turned all of our culture against us. So even when Hawaiians would say, again, this has to do with this is the complicating part, right? Which is that like indigenous people who have been brainwashed by the colonizer can then become self-harming and they enlighten their soul in a certain sense until they reconnect somehow and go like, why am I made to hate this? Why am I made to hate this person that is neither male nor female in the way that the West has taught me to understand that, right?
Well, that's
right. So anyways, and so I remember, and I encountered many Mahu in Hawaii, right? And this is the thing, right? There were some Hawaiians, right, who against the United States ban on our language or culture and eradication from our true history that I was telling about earlier from being taught anywhere. Like everything I'm telling you, the United States, private, public, charter, NGO, nonprofit, no schools in Hawaii teach any of this, right? Going to school is genocide in Hawaii by another example. As part of it is removal of the identity. Going to school in the West is trauma, I would argue. Actually, it's actually child abuse because that's how you get stormtroopers is you go to Western school. Anyway, but that's a bigger argument. But I was not taught any of this. I was just, why is this person not presenting the way that the TV and my American Uncle Sam education and my Catholic parents, that's the Catholic Christian trauma is a whole other thing there, who are homophobic. Why is this person? But they just seemed like a person to me in the arcade playing Mortal Kombat, right? And they were just like a person. They were not really one and they were not really the other. They just were who they were, and they had different manners. So I have a Mahu, but some people like, Silverspook, why aren't you wearing, full hair and in a dress and makeup and lipstick and looking that way? People like ask me that. And like, sometimes I do that because, Mahu, like sometimes you want to dress up, it takes time and it takes effort to make yourself look good. This is the thing for all the dudes that disproportionately women are spending sometimes hours certainly in Western culture to make themselves, look a certain way on Friday night. Like, it's kind of like some people want me to present a certain way, but sometimes I want to present in a more, more feminine, more all out feminine form, and I do that sometimes. And that's part of the gender fluidity. And that's part of people's ability to present how they want to present and to be who they are at different times in indigenous culture. And like, just like there's several Mahu. There's like in Hawaii, Dylan Ancheta is a newscaster. But Dylan Ancheta would, I'm not sure Dylan Ancheta is identified specifically as Mahu. But there are several, like Kumuhina. Kumuhina more often does makeup like every single time. And that's Kumuhina's decision. Kumuhina is also a revolutionary leader in Hawaii. He's like at Mauna Kea is teaching Hawaiian as best as possible as part of the reclaiming this culture of the Gen X generation. These deeply when they were beating children in school, trying to come out from that, right? For Kumuhina was like lived through even a more intense anti-Hawaiian, Mahu, anti-queer, all of this. Anti-queerness is anti-indigeneity, and anti-indigeneity is anti-queerness, right? They burned all of these third gender people often at the stake first when the colonizers showed up in Turtle Island and in Hawaii and the Pacific. So when you ask, like, what is the queer perspective on gender, and like, it's part of it is again, it's throwing the question back in. It's really like, why does your culture try to control the way that people are? Why does Western culture, why does your white American culture, I mean liberal or conservative, because liberals will say, oh yeah, no, I'm fine with queer people, just not around me, not my kids. No.
Yeah.
You love anti-queerness, right? Because that's all your money is made as part of your colonialist white supremacist project and all the fascists that work for liberals, and you're all one party, right? Now, my parents are all that mind. They're like, oh yeah, yo, Chris, I recently talked to my dad about this. He also asked me, why aren't you in a dress? Right. And I said, because, well, why isn't my mom, my mom was there, right? I was like, why is my mom in a t-shirt? Right? Why isn't mom in a dress right now? Well, we all know she's the girl because she has long hair. Well, I mean, but why though, right? She's not performing. We're in the park, it's hot. She's not wearing makeup, she's not wearing lipstick. Why does she have to perform that gender for your expectations? Because white queerness is its own, it's unfortunate, but this is kind of mixed up, which is that, like, it's mixed up in 1,000+ years, right, of this forced binary gender as part of a cis heteronormativity that is about subhumanizing certain, people, color, gender, nationality, etc., non-dynastic bloodlines, right? And so when people transgress that in the West, right, you have to really make a big show of that. I'm not saying you shouldn't make a big show of that. If you're a white person and you be whatever you are, right? But for indigenous cultures, right, who didn't go through thousands of years, centuries to thousands of years of forced suppression of people's of third genders and this control of the population through patriarchy, right, which we didn't have as well. That's so that it's again, it's kind of like I know this is a really complicated answer, but basically, like, as a Mahu person, I am manifesting the gender that was stolen from me in the way that, as far as I know, I'm still learning. I don't know everything. Again, I was trained to be a Goldman Sachs high frequency trading algorithm programmer by an Ivy League feeder private school that my parents happened to get lucky because they thought there I didn't have to pay $20,000 a year, right? So I'm trying to, and even if I went to a public school, it doesn't mean they teach anything. Again, going to Western school is giving you brain damage, right? So I didn't. I'm still trying to undo all of this nonsense in my own mind, right? But I mean, this is sometimes why I don't even like to talk about it unless I have some time, because it because the gender fluidity, and like I said, like, Mahu people, they don't, like, they have hair, and then they have long hair. Sometimes they put on more makeup, they put on less makeup. Like and like in Monkey Man, right, the third gender person is like, they're not trying really hard to pass. Like, they're not wearing a dress and the makeup and the earrings. That doesn't make them less of of their Hydra third gender identity. That's why I think it's, like, really important that people, I mean, you don't have to see Dev Patel's movie, but I mean, it's like, it's an actual on-screen. And then they also do a whole ton of violence, and they kill a whole ton of cops and nasty, horrible rich people. I mean, the third gender people. And Dev Patel beat the crap out.
Don't spoil it for me. I might still be interested in watching it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyways, so
but
it has lots of cool stuff in it, and it has lots. It's like John Wick. It has a lot of John Wick characteristics, but even better politics. Anyway.
Exactly. I wasn't too much a fan of John Wick, although I did like seeing Rina Sawayama kick ass in that movie. I got 3 questions. Three final questions. So briefly answer this one. A quick follow-up to what you were. I have to ask this question, which is a quick follow-up to what you were saying. What is the state of institutional transphobia in the U.S., and has the largely straight cisgender left of all colors been supportive of the trans community, who have been under attack by the Republican Party and the far right, or like those in the UK left and elsewhere, have they largely been, has the trans community been largely thrown under the bus?
Like, again, I can't speak to too much. Are you talking about Hawaii or? Where was it again?
In general, the U.S., but yeah, well, in general, the U.S. I mean, you can talk about Hawaii, but I'm curious. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, like I can't speak for all of the trans people across the United States. From what I gather, I obviously I do know trans people, in the United States. They're it's you know in general, I get the sense that they're not happy with any of the parties and the U.S. politics. Obviously, if you're in conservatives make it more a direct tax, like Moms for Liberty. I know is a big problem. What one which is like goes around, and that's one place. Yeah, if you do have if there are local school boards, and if you can stop the local schools from going in one direction or another, that's one place where uh then voting, getting particular people into those local positions at a community level can have a bigger impact. And I've definitely seen that happen. Like we got rid of one really nasty, really anti-Hawaiian, really racist, overtly right-wing lady who was going to be running like the local area. And after she said all kind of disgusting things like, I don't want my tax dollars funding any more Hawaiian crack babies. She literally said that. And then she was trying to get rid of all the chickens, right? She was trying to get rid of all the chickens and pass laws to get rid of it. She was like literally directly attacking and trying to shut down all kind of Hawaiians, like herself personally. So there's a big backlash against that. We said we got to get this lady out of here. And she was gotten out of there. Yeah, so like on the local community levels, which is kind of where this kind of stuff has to take root. It's, I would say that there is in Hawaii, and that's not actually the trans question, I know, but I know there's a lot of fights that are happening at that level. I don't get a sense that a lot of trans queer people in the United States as a whole, not Indigenous people, but as a whole, I don't get a sense that they have a lot of they don't have a lot of faith in the Democrats. However, at the same time, they're also like very much worried about what could happen from the Republican side of the spectrum. Like on the social issues, there's a little bit more of a slight difference between the parties. Although
But have
the Democrat,
but the attacks that trans and other queer people have faced, but specifically trans people have been facing, uh, are straight gender conforming leftists, straight cisgender leftists, have they been very good allies in pushing back against a lot of the transphobia that the Republicans have been engaging in, that the far right have been engaging in, or have they been throwing or has the straight cisgender left been throwing the trans community under the bus of all colors?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I probably shouldn't answer that since Hawaii is not part of the United States. But yeah, that's one answer. Another answer is that
you can answer for Hawaii, no problem. And if you can enlighten us about the rest of Turtle Islands, if
yeah,
feel free.
Like I don't know. It's. I mean, it's a big question. I think that I can't say that. I know there are definitely straight people that don't show up enough for the queer community for sure. There is there's a lot of obviously corporations that during Pride Month they make a big to do. They made a big to do, as they always do, about how much they love LGBTQ plus people, and then they don't do anything about it materially. They just wave some flags around. I mean, you could put a lot of rainbow flags on the Lockheed Martin bombs. It doesn't really do anything for the queer community in Afghanistan that you're blowing up, or Palestinians that you're blowing up, right? So so there's some of the straight American and including the left that are of that not real comradely behavior, that are not participating in that, right? Then there are some that are. In the United States, it's increasingly becoming, I think it's becoming more divisive. Well, there is a lot of straight and cis and dudes, men. There's a lot of rifts there, like between men and women, and then also between straight and queer, and even sometimes between gay and queer. Which there was some discussion of that recently, where like if your gayness is not necessarily queerness, in the sense that queerness like is suggests like some kind
Well,
of
people,
transgressiveness.
people shouldn't stir up that shit. That's ridiculous to try to do a rift like that. But yeah,
Yeah, it's sometimes that shows up with like the gay people against trans, and sometimes the because I mean it's kind of like everybody's a different place along their journey, and there was people in the Gen X boomer and the Gen X era, but particularly Gen X era, where there was a big queer there was lesbians and gays in the 80s and the 90s, but it often it had all kind of internal problematic aspects to it, that you'd be queer, or you could be gay or lesbian, but you're kind of like reinforcing patriarchy, or reestablishing cis hetero norms inside of your gayness, right? It's kind of like inside of your gay relationships, right? And a lot of the younger queer generation, especially like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are more politically, so some of this is generational, so there's a difference there between the younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha that are more, the politics will be considered more radical, or they're more left, or they're just they're like, the queerness is intersecting with the economic situation. The systemic oppression of queerness is connected to colonialism and the racism, like some of the connections I was talking about earlier, right, with the indigeneity. And so the younger queer, it's whereas some of the older gay and lesbian community, some of them show up for pride, some of them run pride, right? And they have more power in Western US, etc., institutions, and so they have the money to have these big events, right? And they're just, well, I am a gay person under patriarchal colonial capitalism, man. I'm not gonna change anything about those. I'm just gonna be in the same sex relationship and work for Lockheed Martin, or I'm gonna be an executive. I'm gonna lean in, right? And so there's a difference there between some of those in those intersections, right? But yeah, I mean, I can't really say um exactly where everybody is. I mean, as I said, I'm in Hawaii. I see that on a positive note, like I see a lot of the younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha are definitely not. They are not. They are far more radical in their queer politics, and not just being the token gay in the empire. There's definitely much more of that in the younger generation.
that's good.
Statistically, yeah.
So would you say that straight cisgender leftists have been very good allies, at least in Hawaii, towards the 2S LGBTQIA plus community?
Like so again, like some of them we have to go on a case by case basis. I don't there's not really like the straight, I don't know, there's not really like the straight this I don't know about the straight community. There are people that are identify as straight who are supportive of that. But I think a lot of it is just kind of like more people are identifying as, if you are straight, you just not necessarily saying that, you just supporting LGBTQ plus IA politics. But there's less like here is the straight community with the straight party or the straight group in support of the queer politics. It's just kind of like um let's just accept all these gender differences and sexuality differences, and and also let's like connect that to all the other struggles that we have to fight, right? So it's kind of yeah yeah so yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the way that I kind of see it here. I mean, I think that's in Hawaii, and from what I gather, in the US.
Okay. Well, here's hoping that here's hoping that that the straight left will be better are being better allies, not just in Hawaii but all of Turtle Island, because I've been seeing lots of disturbing trends of a lot of you know straight leftists, straight cisgender leftists not pushing back against the avalanche of transphobia we're seeing in Britain and elsewhere. we can learn from our Canadian brothers and sisters and folks in pushing back against it. Because in Canada because
Yeah.
in Canada, uh, yeah, I believe it was last year. There were a lot of there was a growing transphobia and anti-non-binaryism that was starting to develop in schools, and there were lots of protests against these parents' rights group. And I was very proud that the straight, that the straight cisgender leftists came out in very good numbers to push back against it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Second to last question. If you could tear down Mount Rushmore and replace the white supremacists and settler colonialists there with indigenous heroes or heroines, past or present, living or dead, who would they who would they be?
Well, the most important thing, right, is that the six grandfathers that the colonizers sometimes refer to as Mount Rushmore be returned to those native people there. So land back for them is, I think, the most important thing. Who I would put on,
And remember, it could be man or woman, or two spirits, man or woman or two spirit, past or present, living or dead. Who would they be?
yeah. Well, I don't want to be quoted as saying like that the Hawaiian decided what faces to go. So I'll just say six important faces somewhere. Where
Well,
should we put
actually,
them?
actually, there's only there's four people on Mount Rushmore:
Oh, okay, four.
Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and George Washington. So,
Uh-huh.
okay, so who would you replace those four with? So choose one indigenous hero, one indigenous shiro. If you know a two-spirit person, go right ahead. And yeah, living or dead.
Yeah. So let me think. Well, indigenous hero. Um. Yeah. I guess there's so many that you could obviously put up there. Well, the immediate thing that pops into mind is I just what the indigenous people there wanted to have on their mountains, obviously, which is not them for them to be damaged by these white man faces. That would be number one. But obviously, if I'm going to choose famous people, famous and heroic indigenous people, um, Kalakaua would be
Okay,
a hero, and then a shiro would be a Hanani Trask, obviously. And
fantastic choice.
A third gender person. I'm just thinking of Hawaiians because that's what's popping into my head. Kumuhina is a modern third gender Hawaiian mahu like myself that I look up to, and is a hero. And the fourth, what was the fourth one?
Yeah, anyone.
Anybody?
Yeah.
And let's put the one of the women who defeated Custer and stuck the hearing aids in his ear. There we go.
And last question. I've asked this question to you before, but I gotta ask this again. What do you think it's going to take for the vast people power movements in the U.S., from the Black left to the Latinx left to queer liberationists to the workers' rights movement to feminists to eco-socialists to immigrants' rights, illegal or otherwise, anti-imperialist groups, and even Palestine justice groups in America to show more urgent solidarity to Native Americans, Indigenous Alaskans, and your people, Indigenous Hawaiians?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question. I think like I said, I mean I know I said a lot of stuff, and like I'm sure I might have upset some people, but again, everything that I said about what needs to be done, and I'm some people who have strong faith in the U.S. Coming back to the original topic, right? People have strong faith in certain institutions to make changes necessary, right? Whether that is the so-called U.S. electoral democracy, right? The so-called U.S. government, the so-called U.S. justice system, the Supreme Court justices, faith in that system, right? And what might happen if we get some more left justices, right? There's a lot of discussion about that. I see that in the United States. There's a lot of discussion about faith. There's faith in so that U.S. justice system, the government, faith in the U.S. Congress, and if we can get this bill passed, right? If we sue this company, right? If we win against Chevron, or we can sue somebody out of existence. We can litigate our way to revolution. There's people who have strong faith in those things. Obviously, there's conservatives that basically there's two parties. There's two faces of one party. There's the mask off colonialist, capitalist, white supremacists, and then and anti-queer and anti-indigenous, obviously. And then there tend to be conservative, and then there is the mask on. That's the liberal. As Malcolm X would say, the more dangerous, right? The fox in the henhouse. And as Kwame Ture would say, right? If we depend on if we depend on our oppressor having a conscience, or using a nonviolent protest or voting or any of these strategies, not to say that they're bad, and you shouldn't.
I believe he said that in order for nonviolence to work, that your oppressor needs to have a conscience.
Yeah, and the U.S. has none, right? And the collective West has none, right? And so these things stand in contradiction. Now, obviously, like this is where it becomes difficult, because what exactly is to be done? Because obviously, like I've already said, right? In Hawaii, we're not gonna litigate out of a system where all of the courts are completely corrupt and controlled by the United States. I mean, even in the ICC, right? This is what's great about the Palestinian struggle, is it's revealing the entire multi-thousand-year failed experiment that is the entire West, right? Its courts are absolute jokes. United Nations, right? What do we need? I mean, this goes beyond the United States as well. What the United Nations ostensibly is established to prevent war crimes against humanity, right? The worst atrocities possible, right? Such as genocide, right? The United Nations was established to prevent, and one of those things is genocide, right? And then right after that, right? This is one of the internal nonsensical contradictions of the collective West, is that it states these are the only civilized countries, right? Only uncivilized countries commit genocide. And then in that same document, these are the civilized countries: Great Britain, France, United States, Germany, Spain, right? Canada, Japan, all countries historically and continuously committing genocide in perpetuity against Native Hawaiians, against Indigenous Native Americans. Canada has 93 separate line items that it is still in violation of, that are genocidal against Indigenous people in so-called Canada, right? And so France, Britain, every single one of these. In New Caledonia, you can watch people being murdered by helicopters by white militias backed by the French military right as we speak. We're talking right now, they're being killed right now. In Palestine, obviously being slaughtered, being incontrovertibly basically, a concentration camp, and just completely ethnically cleansed on everybody's screens, 8 billion people. That's one of the changes that is great about 2020s and 2024, is this is way more obvious to any human being with any shred of humanity and intellectual honesty left in their body, which is that they can tell that all of that was absolute a joke. And that's and the greatest, so coming to your question, what do Indigenous people need from the non-Indigenous world, from people from the United States, from this unhealed descendant of the Greco-Roman, British, French, American trauma? Sometimes I call them the familyless, because people don't treat each other. People treat each other like tokens or trophies or resources, right? Like, how much money can I get from that child? I would argue there's no families in the West. There are only temporary business arrangements with sometimes sexual characteristics, and sometimes, accolades that my child could get to me if they get into Harvard or get a good job. The Western man is the familyless man. They're what I think it was Amy Césaire said, they're the people with soul loss, and even if individually you might have a guerrilla, radical, non-soul lost person inside, the mainstream majority of the Western culture is that, right? It is communityless. The white man is communityless, right? Community is not a place where people have similar consumer demographic aspects to themselves, right? Everybody liking the Star Wars, I mean, that's great. That's great. You might even find a community there, even in the queer community. I mean, that's why so many people find communities, right? They gravitate towards Black and Indigenous and queer people who still have some soul left and some sense of family, where everything isn't transactional and people think seven generationally, and they think about you not just because, oh, if you are my scion, maybe I can perpetuate my empire into you. Or if I marry up into this system, I will get something. If I like you now and I put you on my Instagram, I take a picture with this Native Hawaiian, right? Like the white people used to come and coconut inside, white inside Hawaiians would take pictures with me to get themselves elected. That's not family, right? That's you've lost your soul. You've defamiliarized yourself. You've joined the great Satan, you know? So what is this, you know? So one of the big problems is the one of the obstacles now for the conservatives and the overt fascists that the West is backing all over the place. I mean, a denazification, you know, with sometimes with very violent means is going to happen. You know, it's going to happen. It's happening right now. You know, in the war zones right now, and that's going to continue right now for other people that are like tend to be liberal, you know, conservative, but they're not at that level of I'm going to kill subhuman people that are not like me. For those people, they have options, right? But one of the things that stops them from joining the full anti-imperial, like in not just anti-imperialism in my bio, like what are you empirically doing? Are you showing up for Palestine? Are you going to lose your good paying corporate job? Are you quitting the military? Are you interrogating your own familial connections and your pastor? And you're going to a college, you're teaching, you're being silent on Palestine because you want to keep your gainful. I understand you want to be gainfully employed. You're a professor, and your entire college is just a giant money laundering scheme for genociders. But I mean, but what are you going to do about that? What are you materially, concretely doing about that? How are you showing unconditional solidarity with the family that you have left to build with, right? How are you connecting with the Asian, African, Latin Americans and actually listening to them outside of the Western controlled matrix of disinformation? Like how, you know, like literally listening to people that are outside of the sphere, because diaspora of African, Asian, Indigenous, Hawaiian, etc. Voices is different from people that are outside of that sphere as well. So how are you connecting to those people? So do all those things. But one of the biggest obstacles, as I kind of pointing out, is the you know, I mean, you could disagree with me, but is the continued fraudulent. It is the false hope, right? It is the false hope of an easy change within the empire, right? Without, that's not going to be too uncomfortable, right? And that if I just vote this way in this presidential election, and I just, you know, if we just get somebody to sue Donald Trump for the whatever time, if we just litigate, if we just you know, if we just do this thing, it will solve this problem in our system. The entire system is completely broken. It's absolutely falling apart. It is unsustainable. And things are not cheap. But people cling, the Western people and Westernized people cling to that because it is easier to believe the lie, right? Like again, like believing in Obama, like he was going to make us. Some people, oh my God, yeah, America is going to stop being an empire. America is going to be not racist anymore. Black family, and things were going to get better, right? And that was a lie that was sold, and the empire was extended, and things have gotten worse. And so people, so to the extent that people are, anything that stops people from stepping outside of that matrix is something that has to my mind, has to be this. That's why I was pushing back a bit hard on some aspects of these things, because I do believe that the belief that policy will change based upon these national elections, or certainly those alone, is a major obstacle, and is concretely just false in the sense that these are not democracies. Europe doesn't have any elections that impact itself in a significant way. As a whole, it was designed and operated from DC. It's funny because it's actually like the Western satellites have even less democracy than the United States, because at least the United States is the plutocracy, you know, Death Star. Everyone else is just these order followers that believe that the things that they have or because of
I would say much of the NATO countries are willing
yeah.
participants. I think people I think people let France, Germany, Italy, and all those countries off the hook far too easily. They are willing participants in this American-led empire, as is Canada, Britain, and so forth. But the big mob boss does have to squeeze their arm, a little bit. But
Yeah, anyways, I'll just finish up with that. That I think that, so people have to, I think, so I mean, and obviously the Europeans, that will be like, hey, we are being run by this big mob boss, and a lot of us are just going along with that so they can get a cut, get paid to do the empire's bidding. So we need, obviously, like, in one positive sense, like at least Ireland, and I was like Ireland, Spain, and Norway is a step, is saying, hey, we're turning on Palestine, and I think Spain recently like didn't allow. There's things that they're doing that are still horrible. At least they didn't. They're not allowing the empire to land its planes and then take off and then use those for genocide. So these are like the litmus tests. And these are the, at the government level, right, in the economic dimension, and at the individual person level, right, all of these together have to all be simultaneously, full spectrum dominance can only be combated by full spectrum revolutionary activity, full spectrum change, all in all of these dimensions simultaneously. Now, and they are changing. Now, they're going to change. And the good news is that, as you said, indigenous socialism or Western barbarism, and this, the capitalist colonialist barbarism, this, there is no future in that. And obviously the rise of the BRICS, the U.S. relative, the U.S. and the G7 relative to the East and the global South, the global majority, economically, militarily, they are all falling faster and faster and faster behind. And there are still many people being harmed across the world, including in Hawaii, in the global South. But the capacity, like, there's so many examples in Nigeria, Burkina Faso. We're talking about New Caledonia, but in Africa, the military bases are being kicked out. They're trying to do more coups around the world. Obviously, in Bolivia, there's, what exactly is happening there is questionable. But the ability for the United States to coup, not just Bolivia, but Central South America, and to get their policy instituted is rapidly declining. They're going with the multipolar. They're going with alternate options, and the ability to extract all the resources into the global North is declining. So increasingly, it's going to be, more and more be actually to the benefit of Americans of different colors, Europeans, and people in that historical colonial dominant countries, to change their ways faster, not just because they feel bad for indigenous people like myself, but because their own lives and their livelihoods. People are talking about, oh my God, where am I going to escape to now that Joe Biden is like, oh my God, what are we going to, where are you going? There's nowhere for you to go. What you need to do is you need to clean up your own house. You can't just go somewhere. What United States is, if Europeans had cleaned their own house and undone the unjust, whatever violent or non-violent actions needed to be cleaned up, right? If they had not done the colonial era is Europe exploding to the entire planet and spreading their damage, trying to get away, right? Like liberals or conservatives or whoever getting on the internet and going, where am I going to escape to now? People were trying to escape Europe and then hurt other people, right? Taking a cut. What the Western world needs to do now is to stop this escaping in a cowardly way, perpetuating their own systems into other people's lands, stealing it, and trying to survive continuing trauma, right? Go back and start fixing your own trauma. Stay in the United States and actually do the hard thing, right? Which is to be, it's going to cost you economically. It's going to cost you your job. It's going to cost you some of your relationships. It's not going to be free. But like in the longer run, right? Restore your soul, restore your community, like actually fight back against, support the people that are already fighting for Palestine, for all of humanity, against all the systems that we just talked about. And it's going to be better. It's going to happen either way. And it's going to be less painful, and it's going to be less total damage. The more people get on board with that, to some combination of, radicalizing moments, education, whatever it's going to take, whatever gets you to that point, because it's not going back the other way. I tell you that much. The global majority is, the colonized world is done with this. The century of humiliation is done. The African The African 500, the centuries of African humiliation, they're done with that, and they're not giving any more free uranium. And Hawaiians, we're not going to be giving any more free vacations on our stolen land either. As the United States, I don't know what's going to happen, but they're not going to be able to sustain those they're not going to be able to sustain their military bases abroad for very much longer. And Hawaii is just a giant big military base, and so I really suggest that people get on that. And I've just been talking for a long time on that, but I hope that answers that question.
Well, here's hoping we both live to see the day where the U.S. left and society at large, as well as those in Australia, gets to the level Canada is at with its relations with Indigenous people, or New Zealand is at with its race relations with its Indigenous people. But here's hoping that also, that Indigenous people in the United States, Hawaii, and Alaska gets the urban solidarity that they deserve. Well, we were joined on this edition of 1+1 with Chris Silverspook, who is a gaming content creator, indie sci-fi writer, and outspoken Indigenous Hawaiian leftist. On our 4th of July special, our Native Lives Matter episode, and everybody have a very unhappy 4th of July, and a very unhappy 4th of July to white supremacists and bootlickers for American exceptionalism. And power to the Indigenous people across Turtle Island, Hawaii, and Alaska, as well as the Indigenous people of Australia, New Zealand, the Sami, the Indigenous Greenlanders, and elsewhere. Power to the people, power to Indigenous people in debt to settler colonialism, and also a very happy pride to the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, and of course, solidarity as well to the Indigenous people of historic Palestine, and hopefully, and everybody who's doing Palestine solidarity work, keep up the great work. And we also shout out to Robert and Selena Egginson of the Noongar people of Australia, and also gotta also show off that. Mm-hmm. And Chris, thank you very much for coming on the program, and good luck to to the bonfire, or whatever you're gonna be up to for the 4th of July, and all my best to you and the Indigenous community there, and we hope to have you back on the later dates.
Mahalo, thank you so much for having me on. And as Haunani Trask would say, kue, fight, and solidarity with Palestine and all Indigenous people and all oppressed people and all our 2S LGBTQI plus and our Hijra and our Mahu and all other third gender people around the world. Mahalo nui loa.